this is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzie Alfonso, giving a shout out to
Something Else.
Something Else, Daddy.
This is Nickel Matara, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to Something Else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Arya.
And welcome to episode number 118 of Something Else. Feast your hair holes on this week's episode as we take a look at Mid-South Wrestling and World Class Championship Wrestling from August 27th, 1983. My name is Arya, and joining me, as he does each and every week, is the Prince Nana to my Swerve Strickland. It's Trae. Trae, how you doing today?
I do not swerve when I drive. I am an excellent driver.
Well, Nana doesn't swerve. Nana just dances.
He dances to the tune of swerving when he drives. That concerns me. Shouldn't celebrate such things.
Yes, would it make you feel better if he swerved to a different song? Like if he was dancing to Final Countdown, would that be okay?
That'd be pretty sweet, actually.
All right. So, you want to talk about All In for a minute?
Sure. Yeah, it's been a hell of a day, hasn't it? We were supposed to... we were going to start recording like right after All In, and then it was about 2 hours ago. I almost got to the end of the media scrum, actually.
Tragedy has befallen the show. So like Trae needed some time, then my computer decided that why should it work? You know, that would be too easy if my computer were to work. And so it took me over an hour to get my computer going again. And fingers crossed, tap on wood, hopefully we're all set and good to go. So I'm already getting a little bit of blowback. A little bit, because again, I'm not that important in the grand scheme of things. I'm getting a little bit of blowback on my opinion on the Bryan Danielson-Swerve Strickland match, because I think people are ignoring the part where I'm saying I thought this was a fantastic match and an instant classic. However, they'd been teasing this for at least a week, that they were going to essentially recreate the Beyond the Mat spot with Mick Foley at the Royal Rumble bleeding in front of his children and all that shit. And sure enough, why let a bad idea go when we can just bring it up on national television over and over again? And Bryan was bleeding and being stomped in the head in front of his daughter and his son, who were like 6, 7, 8 years old. And you can sit here and tell me, well, I'm sure Bryan Danielson told him that wrestling is fake, whatever he wants to say, whether it's fake or whatever. But I'm pretty confident Bryan Danielson's not one of those dads who's kayfabing his kids, telling them that daddy's in a legitimate fight. And it did not help that not only was Bryan's daughter crying and legitimately upset about this, they then showed it on TV and on the big screen. And honestly, I fucking hated it, because again, it's like, she's a child. She's not going to understand like fully that this isn't real. Daddy's not really being hurt, but all you're seeing is this man bleeding in front of you. Your dad is bleeding like 5 feet in front of your face and being stomped in the head by this other man, and you can't do anything about it. Like, it was unnecessary. And I've said this about a lot of Bryan Danielson matches this year, sadly. It was unnecessary. And Yeah.
I feel like that covers a lot of Bryan Danielson's matches recently. We were kind of chatting during the whole show, and I said that it for the past year or so, and especially maybe like the last 6 months, all of Bryan's big matches, except for like the Zach one, because you're not going to get fucked up wrestling Zach,
Yeah.
uh, like I'm always kind of terrified. Number one, he when he started doing the thing like the really ridiculous selling like he did for the Tiger Driver 91 in the Osprey match, I started to become uncomfortable because I got the idea that one of these days he's going to legitimately fuck himself up and nobody's going to believe it because he's done this so many times.
Yeah.
And I am a little scared that just any bump could be quote unquote the Masawa bump.
Yeah.
And I know nobody wants that.
Nope.
But I got what I wanted. I wanted Bryan to win the title one more time. I want him to have a few more matches and kind of go out on his terms. And I don't know. I don't have a real firm opinion on the kids thing. I get it, and then I get it the other way. But Birdie was at the media scrum with her dad, and she was fine. And I don't believe there was any lasting trauma done.
I mean, I hate just constantly back because obviously everyone's different. But if you go back and watch Beyond the Mat, Mick's kids were fine after that match too. Like, it still doesn't take away the whole traumatizing moment. And I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, Birdie was a great actress or whatever. And I just, it was like you mentioned it, the spot in the Osprey match that was completely unfucking necessary. And again, I thought this was completely unnecessary. I think at the end of the day, like a lot of the booking on this show was very suspect, and maybe the booking was a lot better than it came across, but maybe the people involved did not portray it as well. First of all, I loved the Casino Gauntlet match. I thought it was the second or third best match on the show. I don't agree with Christian winning because I'm sorry, I have no desire to watch Christian in a world title match in 2024. And you consider telling me, oh, well, Christian's great. And yes, Christian's great. There's no doubt about it. Christian is fucking great. I don't think he's main event world title match on, at this point, I mean, I'm guessing he's going to get it on a pay-per-view soon. So that's a second pay-per-view world title match for him this year. And then fucking Darby Allin, who, I mean, Darby Allin, like, I had in the back of my head even before everything came out this week that Darby Allin was being groomed for a world title run. I kind of had it in my head that Darby might win a Grand Slam. Well, if that was the plan, I hope Tony Khan rips up that plan and starts over. Because, like, and this is not I'm a CM Punk fan, so I hate Jack Perry. No. If Darby Allin had this match against anybody on the fucking roster, I tell you the same exact goddamn thing. He's getting a world title match in 3 weeks, or 4 weeks, whatever the fucking Grand Slam show is. And he was beaten with like no real consequence. Like, Jack Perry controlled 90% of the match and then just won. There was no controversy. There was no, like, Darby didn't really have a giant comeback. The way the match was booked, his hands were taped together, his feet were taped together, and Jack Perry just beat him decisively. And now Darby Allin's going to get a world title match, and Jack Perry is not, And then if that's not good enough, Jack Perry just wiping the floor with him, the Young Bucks come out, they tease setting Darby on fire, and then Sting comes out and beats the crap out of all three of them by himself. It's like, okay then. So Sting, who is retired again, is on another level from Jack Perry and the Young Bucks, who are on a far other level from Darby Allin. And the person
Okay.
who's getting a world title match is Darby Allin.
Okay, to be fair, Darby Allin won a match where the stipulation was the winner of this match gets a world championship match at Grand Slam. That title shot was not contingent on any other results between now and Grand Slam.
Understandable. But again, like, he's the number one contender. Or if you want to say Christian is, he's the number two contender. And he should not, like, I'm not saying he should have won. Like, fine. You know, there's no reason for him to be TNT champion at this point. You know, Jack can win, but there's a million things they could have done to, you know, protect Darby in the meantime. Like, there was no protecting. Like, if this was WWE 2 years ago when Vince was booking, like, no one would even be, like, no one wouldn't be saying that the booking was suspect, and no one would blame you for saying the booking was suspect. It's like, honestly, at this point, Darby shouldn't have that match. Like, yes, he won the Royal Rampage. Yes, he's getting a title match. But the person who won the Royal Rumble, if Cody Rhodes won the Royal Rumble this past January, and ignoring all the real life shenanigans that happened, if the next night on Raw he did a clean job to Bronson Reed, and I'm not doing this to disparage anybody. I'm just saying it's the difference between the guy getting a world title match and the equivalent of where Jack Perry is right now. If he did a clean job the next night to Bronson Reed, you'd be like, what the fuck is Cody getting the world title match for? He just jobbed pretty quickly and easily to Bronson Reed.
He's getting the world title match because he won the match where the stipulation was the winner gets the world title match.
Okay, but then he shouldn't be doing such remarkably clean jobs in the meantime. It's like, I think the whole point of a casket match was so, well, Darby can lose, but he's not being pinned, so we're protecting him in that way. But the actual match, honestly, you could have just pinned him. It wouldn't have made it any worse, to be honest. That was such a decisive win. Like, there's no arguing that Darby got fucked. There's no like you can't in your own head say, okay, Darby is still a serious contender for the world title. We still think this guy has a chance against Bryan Danielson. Like, no. Like, you know, I'm sorry, you fucked up. You know, do what you're going to do to Cody Rhodes in February. Injure Darby on Wednesday and pretend that bring him back in 6 months or 3 months or 2 months or whatever, and try again. Once the memory of this match has been, you know, eroded and you know, everything's been forgotten.
They might do something and heat him back up on Wednesday. We're not going to bitch about booking that hasn't happened yet.
I know. I'm bitching about the stuff that has happened.
Well, if it comes out that on September 21st or whatever day it is, that I don't know, but I think this booking was bad, then I'll admit it. But until then, I don't have any strong feelings about it.
All right. Any other thoughts about All In?
I really enjoyed the show. I thought I don't think there was anything on it that I thought was bad. Everything was at least enjoyable to great. I thought the Bryan Danielson match was great. I thought the Casino Gauntlet was great. Thought the Ospreay match was great. I think I liked the Mariah May Toni Storm match more than you did, but I've been really into that storyline, and I thought it was very satisfying for me, and I thought I was hopeful that they would stick the landing in the ring. I think they're going to have a very strong case for feud of the year. So I think like other than maybe just the quibbles about the booking, I think that was probably the only like real disagreement we probably had. But you know, it was I thought it was a very enjoyable way to spend a Sunday, and I enjoy I like these shows that are over at 4 in the afternoon.
Definitely. It wasn't so much that I didn't like Tony Storm versus Mariah May. It's like I can definitely see that everybody else liked it more than I. Either everyone liked it a lot more than I did, or they hated it a lot more than I did. I haven't really gone back and read any feedback, but I get that feeling. The stuff that I didn't like, other people didn't like more, and the stuff that I liked, the people who liked it more. I think I'm somewhere in the middle of thoughts on Tony Storm versus Mariah May. I'm still never going to be a fan of the Tony Storm character, but that's just beating a dead horse at this point. I didn't care for the Jericho Hook match, but I think they did the best that you were going to do in that situation. I think it was the best Hook versus Jericho match you could have. Let's just say that.
The fucking pop for Taz getting up out of the announce table was fabulous.
And the funny thing is, it's like that was a really bad Taz mission too, by Brian Keith. Like, I mean, I wasn't expecting it to really choke the motherfucker out here, but it's like, your arm should be around his throat there, Taz. You're kind of like around his shoulder, and at least he didn't try to do it to Big Bill. That would have just been, ridiculous.
It's been a long time.
Yeah. I mean, his last. I mean, you don't really want to call it a match, but then technically it was. His last match was the Lawler match at One Night Stand in 2006.
That might have been the last time he's done a Taz mission on TV. I don't think he ever did one in TNA or anything, did he?
I don't think so. Like, I remember they would do a couple, like, random things where Taz would just be a badass, but since he was never going to wrestle again, it's like it was completely pointless. I did mark out for Nigel McGuinness. Like, you know, I don't know.
So happy.
I don't know if he's going to have more matches or if it was just kind of a one and done type situation, but it made for a fun surprise in the Battle Royal.
I think he's got to have one with Bryan, right? It's booking malpractice if you don't do one with Nigel and Bryan.
I would hope so. Maybe like a double retirement match, like World's End or something.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, the Casino Gauntlet match, and I've talked about it, and I'm pretty sure we talked about it on this show. I don't like the idea of how it's formatted. I don't like the idea of, okay, we have a vague number. At least this time, they told us there's 21 people. Maybe they did before, but like it was on TV, so you knew like there wasn't enough time to do 21 people coming out. But it's like, I know it kills a lot of surprises, but I want to know. I want to at least see some of the people who are waiting to go. Like, even if you don't, we're not going to share the surprise, but here's, Bobby Fish. I don't know why the fuck I thought of Bobby Fish. I think Kyle O'Reilly was in the match. But here's Matt Taven standing backstage. He's ready to go. He just doesn't know whether or not he's going to be called yet. Here's a room full of a couple of people. Like, are they going to be around enough time? So this way, and I mean, I don't know if they'll do this with Christian because he's a heel, but they did it with Ospreay. This way, when you do the angle on TV that someone comes out and is mad at the winner because they didn't get the chance to come out in the gauntlet match, this way you can say, hey, I know that they were really waiting backstage to go in. It's not just some random BS by the guy who was sitting at his home watching the show. But like I said, with that said, I really like this. And I think, and I know Tony likes to repeat a lot of gimmick matches over and over again. For instance, this is at least the third ladder match on pay-per-view this year. So he likes to redo gimmick matches a lot. We know that. I think if you turn the Casino Gauntlet into your New Japan Rambo and you do it once a year on All In, it will become a really fun tradition, even with people like me bitching and nitpicking at it. But
we don't need to do 3 a year.
Yeah, like you did the one with Ospreay winning, and I'm pretty sure they did another one at some point.
Ospreay won 2 actually because he won the
really?
The one the night after Double or Nothing for
The world title match.
or for the one the night after Dynasty for the international title match at Double or Nothing, and then the one for the Forbidden Door title match.
Okay. So yeah, like if you do that, it's like you got a pretty fun tradition. But it's like there's a reason they don't do 4 Royal Rumbles every year. You know,
They just do 2
and,
the same night.
yeah. Like, and obviously no one's ever gonna be this bad, but it makes me think of TNA during Russo when they were having gauntlets at least once a month. Like, remember that episode of Impact where they had 4 gauntlet matches?
I don't, but I believe you.
Yeah. But all right.
Okay, one more comment. Speaking of surprises in the Casino Gauntlet match, very happy to see my guy Ricochet. I know a lot of people have been kind of negative on him coming into AEW because they think he's fallen off, but like, motherfucker, he's been in WWE for like 6 years. I'm sorry. If you like WWE, that is awesome, and I'm glad for you. But ain't nobody in WWE doing the level of wrestling they could be doing somewhere else. And I think in about a month, we're going to be like, fucking Ricochet. Thank God he got out of that place.
Yeah. And hey, actually, one last thing before we go, and we'll go into the Mid-South shit. Fuck these fucking people who are like, and I'm not going to name drop any Facebook groups, because if you're listening to this, you know who the hell you are, and you know who the hell I'm talking about. You know, the fucking people who are like, fuck AEW. Oh, and here's pictures of me going to the shows, but I'm doing it in protest. I'm doing it to show people, like, I hate AEW, and I'm going to wear my t-shirt of a popular podcaster to shove it into AEW's face while I give them hundreds of dollars for my tickets. I give them parking. I buy merchandise. I buy concessions. I drop, a month's rent or so at this show, but I'm protesting by being here. And I'm also protesting by buying the pay-per-view. I'm protesting and blah, 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 blah. And here I am to look cool online by spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars because Tony Khan is apparently not allowed to use this money to pay for stuff. It's only the money for the people who like AEW, which I am not.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm done.
I'm not going to name any names, and I'm not going to do a Jim Cornette borderline terroristic threatening on the podcast here.
See, I was trying to avoid saying JC's name.
This isn't even about him or his supporters. There's like one of the people that you were talking about on Twitter who like is one of the biggest WWF trolls on Twitter and like goes to every AEW show in his city to shit on it. And I can just tell, like, I don't even have to be like, I can smell the bitch on this person through the internet. Mm-hmm. And that's like the one person from the internet that I would just feel morally obliged to slap the shit out of if I ever got the chance.
It's like, if you want to like something, just fucking like it. Who cares if a whole bunch of people who you will never meet, or maybe you will, but like whatever. But it's like, who cares what these fucking people think? Watch what you want to watch, like what you want to like. If you don't actually like AEW and you want to just get rid of $1,000, I'll give you my address. Come send it to me.
Yeah, we'll review something for you.
Yeah, send me $1,000. We'll fucking review some old wrestling. I'll watch Raw on Monday and review it on this show next week. If you want to send me $1,000 fucking dollars instead of giving it to Tony Khan.
Like Mr. Brian Zane says over on Wrestling with Regret, like what you like, just don't be a dick.
There you go. Well, we're going to watch some stuff that we like, or at least that I like, and I kind of dragged you along for the ride.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed this.
Well, it's Mid-South Wrestling, August 27th, 1983. That's what the whole point of this show is, right? Mid-South, August 27th, 1983, from the Irish McNeil Boys Club in Shreveport, Louisiana. Let's go to Boyd, and this week's co-host, good old JR Jim Ross. Speaking of AEW.
This week's edition of Mid-South Television Network is with you. I'm your host, Boyd Pierce, and we have a lot of exciting action. Tag team match headlines the card this week. It'll be Dr. Death Steve Williams and his partner Magnum TA as they take on the rugged duo of Ted DiBiase and King Kong Bundy. North American Heavyweight Champion Hacksaw Butch Reed will be in action. All the top stars are here, including Hacksaw Jim Duggan. You'll see Kamala, the Ugandan warrior, and the outdoorsman, the strongman from the Northwoods of Minnesota, Crusher Darso. We'll see all of them in action right now. Let's go to the ring for the introduction of the opening event. And the man to tell you about it with us this week, a man who's very active in the Mid-South promotion of professional wrestling in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the knowledgeable Jim Ross.
Well, thank you very much, Boyd. Of course, it's a great pleasure to be back with you fans this week. Matchmaker Grizzly Smith has organized a tremendous card, and it should be a great hour of action for everyone. So let's go to the ring now, and we'll hear from Reeser Bowden in our first match getting into the ring now.
All right. So when I play these little audio snippets, what I do is I scroll down my notes to see when my next timestamp is. So this way I can just surreptitiously move the clock, the timer on the video to that point and be ready to press play. Well, I kept scrolling because there's no other audio on this Mid-South show.
Oh no.
And going on the World Class show, there's only two things I'm playing off that. So
Man, now that I'm looking at my my notes, this Mid-South show was match pretty much.
yeah. So yeah, let's hope that you and I are opinionated this week because I don't have any audio to, pad the runtime. Yeah, you and me having opinions? Who'd have thunk it? So today it's Dr. Death Steve Williams and Magnum TA versus Ted DiBiase and King Kong Bundy, plus Butch Reed, plus all the top stars, which apparently includes Crusher Darso.
That's unnecessary.
Yes.
Disrespect to Repo Man.
I would never
Hole-in-one Barry Darso.
I would never disrespect Repo Man.
But you might disrespect Hole-in-one Barry Darso.
Maybe. If he would have actually been Stuart Payne, or was it Stuart Payne or Payne Stewart, whatever the real golfer was, flipped the name. That's what he was supposed to be. If that actually would have been his name, then yes, I'd be disrespecting him.
Stuart Payne would be a great name for a wrestler.
Yes. But then the real golfer died, so it's like, well, we can't really do that. Now that I brought it down, JR's here, and JR was also in London at All In, so we're just going full circle on this show here.
Yeah.
Too bad Crusher Darso wasn't on the show. I think he's still alive.
Was he? He was on SummerSlam '92, right?
Yes, he wrestled Crush.
Yeah. So I was trying to think because Ospreay was talking about on the post All In Media Scrum. There's only been like, I don't know, maybe it's a very small number of people that have done Madison Square Garden, Tokyo Dome, Arena Mexico, and Wembley. And it's like, so Will says he wants to go to Arena Mexico to complete the list. But it's like Moxley, Claudio, Bryan, and the one that you wouldn't expect was
Juice Robinson. Oh yeah, but also Juice Robinson.
Oh, Juice Robinson. And I did look it up to confirm. Tomohiro Ishii has in fact worked in Arena Mexico, so he has now completed the set as well.
Yeah, I remember Dave posted that. I think it was in the Observer a few weeks ago, and it's like Juice Robinson was the one that stood out. And it's like, oh, I guess he did. But then I was like, when he was in WWE, he didn't bring him on to house shows to do Madison Square Garden. And then I'm like, hey, motherfucker, you were at the Ring of Honor New Japan show in Madison Square Garden that he wrestled at. But to be fair, and he wasn't even in the Battle Royal. That you could have given me a free pass for. He was in a 6-man tag on the main show.
Well,
it's like,
to be fair, I try to erase the memory of most Bully Ray matches out of my mind.
Maybe that's what you're doing to me here.
Maybe, hopefully, you're welcome.
He also wrestled at Skyway Studios for TNA. He was the tag team champion with Finlay.
On that list, though, is Juice really more surprising than John Tenta? Wait, when did Juice work Arena Mexico?
I have no idea. Well, maybe this is the wrong week to say this, but I trust Dave at least in this regard.
I'm gonna look this up while we move on here.
Yeah, John Tenta, I wasn't surprised about because he's wrestled all over the world. By the way, Jim Duggan versus Boris Zukov. Sadly, John Tenta was not in this match. But Duggan, by the way, not Boris Zukov, Boris Zurkhov. Boris Zhukov's on the other show. Duggan had his DDP rib tape on with his ribs taped up to his nipples. DDP, of course, famously had his ribs taped for like a year and a half. But I doubt Duggan will have the same dedication to having injured ribs as Page did. Shockingly enough, Boris's offense was concentrated on the ribs. And I thought about how Gorilla Monsoon used to talk about how you should tape up the wrong body parts so your opponent goes after the wrong thing. And I'm like, not sure if that would really help because let's say you had a broken arm, but you put the cast on the other arm. Well, wouldn't your bad arm still be a little suspect? Like you'd still be nursing it a bit, even if the cast is on the other arm?
You'd think so.
Duggan, by the way, used a huge scoop slam. Now, I've never had bad ribs, but I have had a bad back. And I know that it would have been very difficult to easily slam someone while my back was being screwy.
Oh my God. I have pretty chronic back problems. I have a really bad sciatica. And I had to go for unrelated reasons. I had to get a CT scan last week. It's just like a checking on things to make sure I'm okay. But the way that I had to lay, my lower back started spasming, and I had to lay there for like 30 minutes, and I've been in pain ever since. So it made me think of that when you talked about back pain.
I'm so sorry. Could you go give Boris Zukov a body slam?
The choicest line during this match was JR referring to that large target, that head of Boris Zurkhov.
The funny thing is, like, he's obviously still got a big head, and I may have noted this in the World Class review. I think his head looks bigger when he has a beard.
Yeah, I can see that.
By the way, Duggan wins with a 3-point stance into a spear. So this with Boris Zurkhov at 0-1 on this week's show.
You know, I never really registered this before, but I registered this for some reason. I'm a little surprised that Duggan gets cheered in Louisiana being introduced from New York City.
Well, it just shows how popular the guy is.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. We then have Kamala with General Skandor Akbar and Fry, yay, versus Randy Barber. So, good news, bad news situation here. The good news is Reeser Bowden, our venerable ring announcer, has finally stopped calling Kamala 6'8" tall. I think Reeser's finally realized just how ridiculous that is, since he's taller than Kamala. Of course, then Boyd was like, well, we can't call him 6'8". He calls Kamala 6'6". Well, we're at least getting closer to his actual height. I'll be honest, I did not think this match was going to happen. I kind of figured that, Kamala would remove all of his accoutrements, and then Duggan would run out, and they would have a giant fight, and Randy Barber would never get the chance to showcase his grappling skills against Kamala. But nope, the bell rang, the match happened. Kamala wins with 2 splashes to the back. And for those keeping track, which was apparently only me, I think, Kamala's entrance this week took 1 minute 46 seconds. And the match took 1 minute 25 seconds. So
Kamala had music this week. It's like the only person I've seen get music on the show was JYD.
Kamala's had this music, at least in Mid-South.
I don't think I've seen it. Maybe, I don't know.
Has he been on the show since you've been on?
Not a lot. I don't think he's wrestled in the Irishman Hill Boys Club. They've shown some tape.
Oh yeah,
but the real my real concern about this match is I don't think I'd want to get my hair cut by a Randy Barber. He might not be focused on the job. However, this Randy Barber was absolutely focused on doing the job.
He might be poking you in the back of the head. This Randy Barber. So after both Kamala and Jim Duggan wrestle, JR then pitches it to last week's main event with Butch Reed versus Jim Duggan, where if Duggan won, we would immediately go to a commercial break, and then Duggan would have a 5-minute match with Akbar. And of course, as we mentioned, Kamala ran in for the DQ. They did not immediately go to commercial, and we stuck around to watch the injury end. So, in case you didn't listen last week and are wondering why Jim Duggan is wearing his DDP rib tape, that's why.
Yep.
North American champion Hacksaw Butch Reed versus Joshua Stroud. Now, I do have to make a correction. You know, we like to be the fair and honest podcast. We tell things the way it is, and we try our best to not lie. And if we do, we issue a correction as soon as possible. I said last week that if Joshua Stroud was any good, he would have been North American champion in 1986, because the only qualification he needed was to be black. And, you know, that was a Bill Watts thing. It's like, as soon as one black guy left, it's time to push a new one to the moon. I would like to make a correction. As we will see in a few years, it wouldn't have mattered if Joshua Stroud was any good. If he was around, they would have pushed him as North American champion.
He can't be worse than the Snowman, right?
I think he might have had to be. Maybe he was as good as Master G. Yeah.
I still think Joshua Stroud looks like a really jacked Eddie Murphy.
Well, somehow really jacked Eddie Murphy avoided a main event push. Maybe he went to Hollywood and was regular Eddie Murphy stunt double.
Maybe. I laughed when Stroud, he did like a drop kick and then tried a monkey flip, and Reed just said nope.
I looked at it as he did a drop kick to the quadriceps, which Reed blew off. I did note that JR kept calling this national television. At this point, I believe they were in Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, Texas, Oklahoma, and California. So they are, I would say they need at least 10 to 12 more states before I would chalk it up as national television.
Interstate television.
There you go. Reed won with a Gorilla Press Slam, and I'm starting to wonder if this is on purpose, because I don't think Stroud's the first guy to do this, or the first jobber to do this, but Stroud did not help at all. Like, this was very much Reed powered him up. Like, normally, like, we've all seen it. You post on the guy's shoulder, and you kind of help push yourself up when the guy pushes you up. Stroud did not do that. His arms were at his side and flailing around. This was a shoot to Joshua Stroud. Maybe this is why Stroud did not win the North American title. But yeah, I think, like I said, I don't think it's the first time we've seen that either. But Reed picked up the win.
Indeed, he did.
Yes, shockingly, Joshua Stroud did not beat Butch Reed here.
Stroud had a much higher quality of competition this week than he did last week, and he didn't do nearly as well.
Ted DiBiase and King Kong Bundy versus Dr. Death Steve Williams at Magnum TA. At least we've reached the approximate halfway point in the show this week when we went to the main event match. So it won't be like last week where we're going to have 30 plus minutes of standby matches. So this was not a good week to be a referee in Louisiana or Texas. So we have two referees. Now, this DiBiase gimmick's been going on since June of '82 when he turned heel in the Junkyard Dog. You know, where he's got a foreign object hiding in his tights. He puts it in his glove. He uses it to knock out his opponent. I tried to punch my hand so I could make a noise here on the microphone, and I missed. So I'm having a great day over here.
Did you hear mine?
No,
I
tried.
Anything?
Nope.
I guess my mic is really good at cutting out the unnecessary noise. Good $50 Best Buy microphone.
And I'd like to point out still that my $20 Walmart special from years ago was still the headset that I use, and it still works better than the more expensive stuff that I've purchased since then.
Funny how that works.
Yes. So DiBiase is being searched by 2 referees, and he takes this as a violation of his civil rights. So out comes General Skandor Akbar, and DiBiase rolls outside to have some sort of conference with him. And you can see on the camera, and as JR picks up, DiBiase slips General Akbar what appears to be a foreign object of some kind. The problem with that is not only was JR looking at it, not only was I looking at it, so were both referees, Dr. Death Steve Williams and Magnum TA, all looking at Ted DiBiase giving the foreign object to General Skandor Akbar. And then,
well, Akbar can have gimmicks on him. He's not wrestling.
Where do you think they would point this out? Like, hey, and they have to play dumb because then DiBiase rolls in, acquiesces to the search, and shockingly doesn't have anything on him. So the match began.
So we determined during the course of All In that the reason DiBiase has to hide the glove is because you are not legally allowed to wrestle in a glove if you are not a dentist.
Correct. That was, I think it was Shivani who said that.
Ted DiBiase, not a dentist.
To the best of our knowledge.
He's a lot of things, but he's not a dentist.
No. Or if he is, he never used his degree very well. So Dr. Death is still green, but he is improving by leaps and bounds. There is a lot less hesitation in what he does. And shockingly, it helps to have people constantly wrestle good workers like Ted DiBiase and Mr. Olympia when he was here. It turns you into a better wrestler. Now, with that said, Williams and Bundy at one point collide mid-ring, and Bundy fell into the ropes. I don't care if that was not supposed to happen because it didn't look very smooth, but it was very believable and very impressive. If these 2 fucking bulls collided with one another, the stronger one, the guy with more momentum, and Williams did have more momentum when this happened, would prevail, and the other would stumble backwards and fall down more than likely. But they do get the heat on Death until Bundy misses a knee drop. TA gets a hot tag. He gets a sleeper on, and of course, a 4-way breaks out. Akbar meanders back out and tosses DiBiase the international object, which knocks out TA. DiBiase tries throwing it back to Akbar, but Jim Duggan runs in and intercepted the international object. With the referee distracted by Bundy and Williams, Duggan knocks DiBiase the fuck out, and TA picks up the win.
So we're talking about how much promise Doc is showing, and he's still in the puppy with big paws stage. This is really like you're starting to see that Magnum's got that je ne sais quoi. He's got something. And I spent most of this match kind of fantasy booking. Like if he had been as jacked as he got by 86, you could totally have had Magnum TA in the Hulk Hogan spot, and he would have been great.
Or he could have had Magnum TA as the heel challenger.
What? Yeah, and then I started thinking about 87 when you got Babyface Magnum against the $1 Million Man. That'd have been good shit.
So not Babyface Magnum versus Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3?
Yeah, I don't think that was the right dynamic. That was a very specific to Hogan kind of dynamic, I think.
Look at the size of Magnum and Andre. I mean, Magnum is 6'4". Andre is 7'5". And then Magnum tries to slam him, falls down, makes the Hulk Hogan come back. Because even if it's Magnum TA, he still has to Hulk up, give the big boot, the big leg, and the body slam. Call it a day. Oh my
God. Magnum, I don't even know if he could do it. Magnum hitting Andre with the belly-to-belly suplex.
I guess if Andre would let it happen.
Yeah. This was a better match than we usually get on this show. It was not super long, but it has some substance to it.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it was like you said, it was a pretty good match. DiBiase's a great worker. Steve Williams is getting better. TA is getting better. And Bundy, works really well for his gimmick and whatnot.
Bundy is great at playing the role of King Kong Bundy.
Yes, he is. So it's funny because like DiBiase's been here forever, but it's like at this point, especially, it feels like I don't know if I think he's on his way out because I think they're going to do one of the 8 million loser leaves town matches with him and Duggan sooner or later. I don't think he's here that much longer, which makes sense because, like I said, he's been here forever. Like on those, he's the only person from those early shows that we did that is still here, other than Dog. And I was going to say Dog never leaves, but we know Dog does leave. But for the sake of what's going on here, Dog, Dog's supposed to be the person that never leaves.
DiBiase is going to be kind of in and out, right?
Yeah, I know he's going to leave, but I know he also comes back and they redo the Rat Pack with him and Dr. Death, Steve Williams. Spoiler alert, by the way, in case
he's got the famous match in the boys club with Flair, and I can remember if that's 84 or 85, but
I believe
that's
it's 85.
I think that's when he turns babyface, I think.
Yes. Actually, what episode was this? This was 207. So in 2 weeks, it is in 2 weeks, 2 weeks is the end of Ted DiBiase, at least on TV. Yeah. He does make a one-off appearance. He does a Houston show in November. He does a random TV show in January. And then he's gone until late 84.
Where's he going? Georgia?
That I don't know. I just did the Mid-South. Let me see. All promotions.
Give it a look here.
3. All Japan, Georgia. Looks like he wrestles in Kansas, but that might just be a one-off. Yeah, so it looks like All Japan in Georgia.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Good places.
Yeah. No.
Fan of both. At least wrestling wise, I'm a fan of both Japan and Georgia.
Well, then we get Max versus our perpetual Alabama junior heavyweight champion, Mike Jackson. And if you're one of those people who have no idea what I'm talking about when I keep calling Mike Jackson the Alabama junior heavyweight champion, it's because when he was a jobber on WCW Saturday Night, wrestling the Midnight Express every week with a different partner for what felt like 3 years, he was always introduced as the Alabama junior heavyweight champion, even though he never had a title belt. He never defended the Alabama junior heavyweight title, but he was always the Alabama junior heavyweight champion, whatever that is. And so, yes, it doesn't matter if he's still wrestling in Hazel Green, Alabama on May 18th, 2024, doing the job to Steve Michaels. He will always be the Alabama junior heavyweight champion.
And if you don't know why we're calling him the missing link Max, go listen to last week's show.
I was gonna say, or if you don't know who the hell we're saying when I say Max. So Max, aka the missing link, wins with a headbutt to the kidney and rib area. Wrong guy won.
I gave this match a 1.5 stars, and it was entirely due to Mike Jackson working his ass off for 3 minutes here.
By the way, Steve Michaels, the person who Mike Jackson wrestled in his most recent match, he's allegedly 6'6" and has wrestled a lot in OPW.
Wasn't Mike Jackson on Impact like last year or so?
Not last year, but it was taped before the pandemic, but aired during the pandemic. It was Johnny Swinger, whose gimmick still is that he's stuck in the 70s and 80s. He was going to wrestle a young buck named M. Jackson, and it was Mike Jackson. And this was before And this was before
a young buck named M. Jackson.
This is before the TNA AEW relationship too. So
yeah, that was a thing that happened, wasn't it?
It really was. And this was when I think I was the only person who watched and enjoyed Impact on a weekly basis.
I actually did for a period there. I was watching some Impact. Liked some stuff, but then like there's always shit that this is always going to be Impact Wrestling.
I created the term Impact's gonna impact because,
by the way, Mike Jackson did in fact appear on Impact twice in 2023. Okay, he was on the he was in a 6-way scramble on the Hard to Kill Countdown show, and then he challenged Trey Miguel for the X Division title on Impact.
See, I don't remember that. I thought you were going to bring up when they did Slammiversary, and so they brought back like the really bad gimmick matches. They had a reverse battle royal, and Mike Jackson was in it, and he did the Undertaker rope walk, but he did it around the barricade, around the entire ringside area.
It's fabulous.
Yes. And keep in mind, I don't even remember who won that reverse battle royal, but I remember that spot with Mike Jackson.
Shark Boy, and I only know that because I'm looking at it on Cage Match right now.
Really?
Yeah.
You could have given me the list of people in it, and I still wouldn't have guessed Shark Boy. You could have told me whoever the last person that Shark Boy eliminated was, and I would have guessed the other person. Unless it was Johnny Swinger, because Johnny Swinger never wins, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't him.
Give Shark Boy a shell yeah for winning the reverse battle royal.
Shell yeah. That also might explain why Shark Boy was guest GM at Impact 1000, which I don't think ever got explained. So talking about Shark Boy and Mike Jackson and Johnny Swinger are a whole lot more interesting than the strong outdoorsman from the Northwest, Crusher Darsow, versus Tim Horner. So, now we spent last week, we talked about Crusher Darsow's poor fashion choices when he's wearing his super baggy cut-off Daisy Duke shorts with a rope belt. Unfortunately, this show was taped immediately after last week's show, so we don't know if he's going to still be wearing this gear in the future. So unfortunately, he may not have had an actual pair of tights. And thankfully, the mystery of what Darsow wears under his baggy Daisy Dukes is still a thing, because Darsow, once again, did not take a bump. I did love JR's description of what Darsow did. Darsow apparently spent 3 years hunting and fishing and did not interact with people. And then somehow he became a bouncer in Minnesota and discovered Mid-South Wrestling. And so he decided to get into wrestling.
I wrote that down and then wrote, I don't really understand his backstory.
I'm more like, he's a bouncer in Minnesota. How was he watching Mid-South Wrestling?
He was getting tapes for, let's see, who in Minneapolis would have been getting Mid-South tapes? Somebody, some fucking nerd.
It wouldn't even have been him. It would have been whoever was in charge of the TV in the bar that he was bouncing at.
Yeah, it was somebody with an AWA connection was getting Mid-South tapes. I'm sure of it.
I was gonna say maybe Vern was there and Kamala beating up Andre the Giant of the
204. You grew up in kind of the Northeast. Were the Dukes of Hazzard as culturally relevant to you as they were to me?
No, but I also think it's, at least, if not entirely due to the fact that it was North Pennsylvania, but at least partially due to the fact that it was like, well, I guess you're younger than me, but like I grew up in I was born in 84, so I mostly grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, and the Dukes of Hazzard, I'm pretty sure was a thing before I was born, except the Jessica Simpson movie.
It started in '79 and I think went 7 or 8 seasons. So
Okay.
it probably ended in like '86. I watched it in reruns in the '90s. And I'm sorry, I try to be fairly consistent in most of my opinions. And I talked on the Smoky Mountain show about how I feel about the Confederate flag. But the General Lee, don't fuck with the General Lee. That's a religious symbol.
I I somehow thought you were going to bring this all about Crusher Darso's Daisy Dukes.
Well, that's where it started because I was like, yeah, I was thinking this is 1983. This is the heyday of Daisy Dukes, and you could tell that Darso was influenced by the culture of the time. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe it was maybe they were watching maybe there was a Southern network in Minnesota that aired Southern cultural programming, and they aired the Dukes of Hazzard and Mid South Wrestling. Maybe that's what happened.
There you go. Maybe he had a contact in Louisiana that was taping Dukes of Hazzard reruns for him, and they also snuck onto the tape an episode of Mid South, and thus, it happened.
And then it all came together with
Yeah.
Crusher Darso in Daisy Dukes on Mid South Wrestling.
Baggy Daisy Dukes too. Like that's
That yeah. Well,
there's
I
like there's part of me that really wants him to take a bump because I want to be confident that he's wearing something underneath his baggy Daisy Dukes. And then part of Mhm.
I do not believe that Barry Darso fills out a pair of Daisy Dukes as nicely as the great Catherine Bach did.
I would bet my left arm that uh, that he doesn't do that. By the way, he does win with an over-the-shoulder backbreaker. So once again, he has no need to bend down, get on the ground, get up, anything like that.
Did we even mention that he was wrestling Tim Horner? Did that
I
come up?
think so. He's wrestling Tim Horner, in case they didn't mention it. Horner does the job.
A minute 15, Canadian backbreaker, dud. And
so then we have a match.
Oh boy, did we.
As opposed to the 5 matches we've already seen, we had a match here. We had a 6-man tag. Rip Rogers, Doug Vines, and Mike McGee versus John E. Rich, Art Cruz, and George Weingroff's Massive Penis. Now, you might be wondering, well, what's such a big deal here? You have at best 5 jobbers in Johnny Rich, who's won like 3 matches at this point. And it's like, we've been doing this show since December of 1981. I say we, but it's been me with a former co-host for like 4 weeks and me with Trey for, the last, 4 months or so. But this, I believe, is the very first 6-man tag we've seen on this show since we started doing it.
It's pretty hard to fuck up a 6-man tag. Like if you put a 6-man tag on TV and just tell them to do whatever, it's almost always good. And this was like, I thought that this, even considering that we had the missing link match and the fucking Darso match, and a fucking Kamala squash. Overall, it feels like this was a higher quality of wrestling this week. But I think that's just because the Doc and TA tag match was good, and this 6-man was pretty good.
Yeah. Now during this match, they do announce that next week, Buzz Sawyer is going to be returning, along with the fucking Road Warriors.
They better not be fucking with me. This better not be one of the things where they fucking promise me Mil Mascaras for like 3 weeks and he never shows up. That I better get some fucking Road Warriors next week.
Hey, you weren't around for the midget tag team match. That thing got fucked around with. Yeah, the fucking Road Warriors. The funny thing is that I could be wrong. Like, in my mind, it's Hawk and Animal in biker gear. So not even like, shoulder pads and all that shit. So we'll have to see. But I think that's what it is. And I'm also pretty certain Paul Ellering will not be with them. Now, as I say that, watch, he'll be here next week with them. And I say that because Paul Ellering, Mid-South fans know him as the guy who cut some wacky-ass promos and worked out with children on the show, including the one time where he was doing pull-ups with a child around his waist, and the child was dropping, and his head kept bouncing against against Paul Ellering's ass.
Oh my!
It was tremendous. Like, legitimately, you need to go. It's somewhere summer of '82. There's like a weekly series of Paul Ellering works out vignettes with children, and it's like it's insane. And among, let's see what else. Like, he did a one promo one time talking about how this is the land of the free and the home of the foot-long hot dog. Ha ha ha. Can you dig it, Reeser? Reeser was like, yes, I can. And
Yeah, so they would have been coming from Georgia, right? They hadn't even been to AWA yet.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, I'm looking, and I'm not going to click on it and spoil whatever's happening, but I see under Hawk's, year by year career, he does have 7 matches in Mid-South Wrestling in 1983. So I guess we're going to see some Road Warriors.
Nice. By the way, this is a slightly longer than usual expiration of time match. Unfortunately, I spent as much time paying attention to it as I usually do to the expiration of time match. I will say JR made this more exciting than it was. So even though I was just kind of paying fleeting attention, he did make me look up far more often than the usual end of the show match. So good for him. 4th or 5th Mid-South show, and he's already heads above Boyd and pretty much every other announcer we have on these shows. And the finish saw Cruz and Weingroff double dropkick McGee, and then Rich pinned him. So
I like Art Cruz had Rip in a headlock and Rip tagged out to Mike McGee. So Art instantly let go of Rip and grabbed McGee in a headlock. Good. There was a lot of very headlock centric match, but I enjoyed it. And then Johnny Rich won with that neat kind of half Nelson cradle that I like. And yeah, I hope this isn't the last time that we're going to see the pride of Arab, Alabama, Mike McGee.
I guess we'll see. I didn't really do too much digging there. Righty. So yeah, that was Mid-South Wrestling. It was not a show that you needed to go out of your way to see. Like, there were no angles on the show. There were no interviews. There really wasn't anything to write home about, but it was just a good, solid wrestling show.
Yeah. I did not get angry. I did not get depressed. I didn't think the bad thoughts. This is the good and very enjoyable show.
All right. So we're going to get in our car, head 190 miles west to the Sportatorium in Dallas, Texas for World Class Championship Wrestling. Let's go to the intro with Bill Mercer, who's going to give us a 40-second break from talking.
This is World Class Championship Wrestling from the Sportatorium, the most famous wrestling arena in the world in Dallas, Texas. And we have tremendous event tonight. Buddy Roberts, the fabulous Freebird, and he battles the modern-day warrior, Kerry Von Erich, in one of our main events. Buddy Roberts, Kerry Von Erich. Also, gorgeous Jimmy Garvin defends his American Heavyweight Championship, and Bruiser Brody battles the likes of Boris Zurkhov. All this on World Class Championship Wrestling. Coming up next with our first bout, Jose Lothario and gentleman Chris Adams from England. Next.
So yes, Boris Zhukov is here too. He's going to be wrestling Brody, but we knew that from last week. They did plug it last week. And we're also going to get, Buddy versus Kerry here in the most famous wrestling arena in the entire world, the Sportatorium in Dallas, Texas. Now, not being alive in 1983, and of course I'm going to ask somebody who also wasn't alive in 1983, would it be safe to say the Sportatorium, if not the actual most famous arena in wrestling, at least one of them at this point?
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah.
So, am I correct? Bill Mercer used to have a mustache, right?
Yes, we talked about this a few weeks ago. He shaved.
Oh, I don't like it. Grow it back.
I think he is. I think you can see that he has a bit of a shadow there.
Yeah.
So Chris Adams versus Jose Lothario. Mark Lawrence was definitely drunk this week. You know how like some video players you're able to fast forward at like 1.5 speed? I think that's how Mark Lawrence was reading the introductions to this match. Because I'm like, what the hell happened here? And he's just speed reading the introductions of Jose and Adams.
He must have been sneaking sips from a flask between matches, because this was taped like with the show from last week, and I swear he seemed sober last week, so he must have been taking some nips.
I mean, if you're gonna keep watching Chris Adams do 10-minute time limit draws with the low card wrestlers after he beats the main eventers, it's like I'd be drinking too at this point.
So in a neat little historical trivia note, this was the guy who trained Shawn Michaels against the guy who trained Steve Austin. So these guys gave us the WrestleMania 14 main event.
And I blame Jose Lothario because, you know, Shawn Michaels had to have fucking Undertaker, threaten him to go to the ring. And
I love that story. That's just a great story.
It's funny because, like, Shawn denies it ever happened. And I say it's possible that, like, because, like, the story that you also hear is, like, Undertaker just went backstage. He put down a chair, sat there, and didn't get up until the match ended. So it's like, I can believe that Shawn may not have known that that's why the Undertaker did that. So it's like, I'll give it that, I guess. I'll give it the begrudging, acceptance.
Never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
It's funny because I give Shawn Michaels during this time way too much. Like, in his book, he, like, and I think I said this on this show, it's like, Shawn Michaels gave his version of all these stories. And everyone's like, oh, what bullshit. He's lying here. He's lying here. It's like, I didn't look at it as he was lying. I looked at it as, like, he's telling the same story, but from a different point of view. So how is it lying if we're reading this from his point of view? Like, yes, to him, Bret Hart was the asshole, And to Bret, Shawn was the asshole. Probably to most people, Shawn was the asshole. But, in Shawn's mind, it's like, Bret was doing A, B, and C, and in Bret's mind, Shawn's doing D, E, and F, and neither were fucking innocent in all this, by the way. But
I feel like a lot of people have sort of overcorrected on Shawn in recent years. That he's like, quote unquote, canonically like the greatest wrestler in WWE history. So people have decided that, well, no, he wasn't good actually. I've been watching like those 1993 Raws, and I mean, I knew this, but I've just been reminded just lately, holy shit, Shawn Michaels was good.
Yes. Shawn Michaels was really good at professional wrestling.
Now, I will say, like, there was a time that I thought Shawn Michaels was like the greatest wrestler ever, and then I watched a whole lot more great wrestlers, but still, like, Shawn Michaels is fucking phenomenal.
Yes. And it's like, and the best thing that Shawn ever did was be able to come back in 2002 because, if his career would have ended in 98, like, how many people would ever say anything nice about this guy? Like,
yeah,
like Triple H, and that's about it. It's like, he redeemed himself. It's like, sometimes he had to be kicking and screaming to do a job, see Hulk Hogan, but by and large, fucking A, he did a 5-minute match with Chris Masters on TV where all he did was sit in a full Nelson the whole time. It's like,
I cannot in good conscience blame him for the Hogan thing.
In some degree, I do, because, like, he agreed to do the match in the angle knowing that Hogan had absolute final creative control and that Hogan wasn't going to lose. And maybe, like, he had in his mind, hey, I can appease to his ego, I can set up a 2-match series where they go 50-50, and this way, whatever. But at the end of the day, he agreed to this angle knowing at the end of the day he was doing a job to the leg drop. So it's like I can only give him so much credit for this, but like he was as unprofessional as it was ever going to be during that period.
All of the criticisms of that match are valid, but one of the funniest fucking things to ever happen.
Yes. So all of this, by the way, no matter what you may think of us rehashing this discussion for the 83rd time, more interesting than Chris Adams versus Jose Lothario. I know you're not a football fan, or at least a big football fan anyway, but Jose Lothario was wearing what I believed to be tights that were designed like the Baltimore Colts logo. It was the same royal blue with the white horseshoe imprint on it. It may have just been a U, but I'm not sure that makes any more sense than it being a horseshoe. And speaking of the Colts, we're about 7 months away from them packing up in the middle of the night and moving to Indianapolis. I've got a conspiracy theory that no one has ever broached before.
So they left because Jose Lothario wore their colors on World Class Championship Wrestling?
To some degree, but not quite that. So this is before NFL had free agency. So if you were drafted to a team, you played there until they got rid of you. There's no other option to do anything else. So since they couldn't all just go join the Dallas Cowboys or Kansas City Chiefs or New Orleans Saints or even the Houston Oilers, all cities that were closer to Dallas, they convinced the Colts owner, Jim Irsay, to move to Indianapolis, which is only 890 miles away from Dallas. So this way they'd be closer for the first annual David Von Erich Memorial Parade of Champions coming up next May.
Never thought of it that way.
Yeah, Baltimore is almost 1,400 miles away, and Indianapolis is only 890 miles away. This is what I do when Jose Lothario is wrestling Chris Adams.
You know what? I'm gonna defend this match a little bit. I thought that this was a nice, clean, a quote unquote scientific match. I kind of liked this.
Well, my ears perked up when Lawrence announced there were 3 minutes left, and my response was, "Oh my fucking God." And sure enough, because Chris Adams cannot beat anyone who isn't a main eventer, the match went to the 10-minute time limit draw. Now, I haven't asked Trey what the time is yet, and I'm sure he'll tell me in a second. But I don't want to call bullshit on the 10-minute time limit draw. But 10 minutes ago, Mercer was introducing the show.
Yeah, it was once again. It was in the 8-minute range. It was 8:31. They did you weren't paying attention? They ran a fucking high spot, and Adams ended up on the apron down on his side and was like fucking shaking, like moving his hands and feet trying to get his balance, and then just fell off the apron to the floor, and I laughed.
So my final thought was, I guess Jose is Ken Mantel's brother too.
Jose, Ken Mantel's got a lot of brothers. Johnny, Dutch, presumably.
Jose.
Jose Mantel Lothario.
Jose might be like a brother-in-law.
He might be it might be a Big Daddy Dudley situation where Mr. The original Mr. Mantel. Well, maybe it was the original Dutch Mantel, the Texas wrestler from like the 50s.
Yeah.
Maybe he was the progenitor of all of these wrestling sons. And he had the sons in Texas. He had Jose Lothario down in Monterey. He had, who else has Chris Adams gone to? Like he's not Terry Gordy's father because no. Chris Adams actually pinned Terry Gordy.
He's not the Monk's father either.
No.
Well, we then go to what is termed the fiasco in Fort Worth when Jim Garvin beat Kevin Von Erich for the American Heavyweight Championship. Not sure why it's always a fiasco or a travesty when a heel wins a championship in this territory. Kevin signals for the claw, and the fans are like, "Yay! We want you to put your hand on his head." Maybe they thought the claw was pulling out the evil spirits. Anyway, that was somehow against the rules because David Manning pulls Kevin off, and Garvin is somehow bleeding from his exorcism, which Sunshine took offense to. So Kevin then pulls Sunshine into the ring. David Manning then chastises Sunshine. And I'm like, motherfucker, it's not her fault. She didn't ask to get dragged into the ring. Anyway, she sprayed perfume in Kevin's face, which he deserved, and Garvin won with a small package. And then at the end, I was confident that Kevin was diving into Garvin's arms for a hug, but apparently that was an offensive maneuver.
We spent 30 minutes at the top of the show talking about All In,
and we didn't mention my fuck
we didn't even mention that we had to see Kevin Von Erich put the claw on somebody.
Now, Kevin Von Erich was there, and unlike what I kept trying to say over and over again, David Von Erich did not get booked for the show.
That would have been something.
Yes. What's his name? Tony Khan is able to convince a lot of people to sign with his company. He hasn't yet convinced David Von Erich.
Not yet.
Yes. So Kevin Von Erich is at the desk to cut a promo with Bill Mercer, and they just watched this riveting footage. Let's go now to the only other piece of audio I'm playing on this week's show, Bill Mercer and Kevin Von Erich.
Well, I think we really have to say, Kevin, that gorgeous Jimmy Garvin didn't win it. Sunshine should have the belt.
Well, have you ever seen a guy beat that bad? I beat him completely, thoroughly. I was ripped off, Bill.
What about a return match now? It looks like he's going to try to avoid that.
Exactly. I'll be lucky if I can ever get him to give me a rematch. Now, my only hope is that the NWA orders a rematch, but I don't know. That could take a long time. Knowing Jimmy Garvin, now he accused me, remember, of ducking him, ducking other challengers. So I said, hey, okay, let's put it on TV. What'd I get for it?
Well, I'm sure that they're going to have to see that match and see this tape, and they won't have any question about it. They will demand a rematch.
If they'll watch the tape.
Well, we'll hope to see you back in that battle again soon. Outstanding job, even with that crazy finish. We're going to be back with the new American Heavyweight Champion, who is gorgeous Jimmy Garvin, and he'll be taking on a newcomer, a challenger, Mike Reed. We'll look at that next on World Class Championship Wrestling.
All right. So I'm starting to think the NWA is like the Supreme Court of the United States. Because Kevin's like, I'll get the rematch if the NWA agrees to actually watch the tape. And I thought about how the Supreme Court can choose to not hear a case that gets appealed to them.
In my mind, in the unified rules of professional wrestling that I've been slowly writing in my mind, I feel like it needs to be specifically explained, like the appeals process, that there should be a governing body that you can appeal miscarriages of justice like this to, and feel like that's the role that David wants the NWA to fulfill here.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I guess we'll see if the NWA actually watches it. I did giggle a little bit the way Bill Mercer ended it. He says, we'll be looking at the new American Heavyweight Champion. Who is Jimmy Garvin? And that lengthy pause made it sound like he wasn't sure who Jimmy Garvin was.
So it Bill Mercer saying during the match that Garvin says he's going to have a title defense every week. I wonder what that's going to be like. And I'm like, he's already not doing that. So I think Bill Mercer might be a little slow. Were all the brains in the mustache? Is that what happened?
Apparently. In fact, we go to the match, American champion Jim Garvin with Sunshine versus a newcomer, Mike Reed, who has been on this show several times before, never winning. And I'm like, when did Mike Reed ever win a match to deserve to challenge for the American title? And I'm like, this is before Mark Lawrence is even introducing them. I'm like, I know Garvin said he'd defend the title every week, but shouldn't he have a list of actual challengers to defend against? And Mark Lawrence was apparently reading my mind, and he quickly announced that this was not a title match. And so Mercer even says Garvin said he'd have a title match every week. So in my opinion, it is not Garvin's fault that this is not a title match. He's here. He's wrestling. He's wrestling another trained professional wrestler. Why is this not for the American heavyweight title? Other than the fact that Mike Reed hasn't earned a title shot. But why does that matter?
It was confusing because Mark Lawrence introduced Jimmy Garvin as the defending champion and then had to clarify that this was a non-title. But it's probably we're overthinking it, and it's just because Mark Lawrence was drunk.
Probably. So it may have been a title match, and Mark Lawrence was just going to business for himself.
Maybe
he thought Mike Reed was going over, and he's like, well, he's not winning the title, so we can't do that. Let's just say it's a non-title match.
Maybe Mark Lawrence is the Mark Curtis of world class, and he has more power than we realize. He can unilaterally determine these things.
He's secretly on the world class board of directors.
Yeah. He could be on the NWA board of directors. We don't know.
Mercer calls Garvin a peacock and a dandy. Now, he's a dandy, but is he the dandy?
Not El Dandy.
No. Garvin had the match won with a backbreaker, but that wasn't good enough, so he picked up Mike Reed and pinned him after a backbreaker.
Mm-hmm. That is what happened.
Kevin Von Erich then skips to the ring, and he's like, hey, asshole, I know you just had a match, but I'm going to beat you up and steal your title belt. Garvin was rightfully angry that Kevin was stealing his property. And of course, David Manning, the asshole biased referee he is, was in no hurry to help. So Garvin just left without his championship belt.
Yeah. Fuck him.
Yeah. Kerry Von Erich versus Buddy Roberts. Buddy took offense to the fans calling him bald. I would be too, since he is obviously not bald. He has a giant head of hair that he just, he holds down some amateur boxing headgear. And then Mercer calls him Old Baldy. I don't know, just the idea of Bill Mercer calling somebody else Old Baldy just, tickles me down deep there.
There's an element to this that I hadn't thought about before. I didn't realize it during this match. The helmet protects him from the Iron Claw.
Ooh, I did not think of that either.
Buddy Rogers. We like to talk about some people aren't the sharpest tool in the knife drawer. Buddy Rogers is actually he might be. He's one of those that is the sharpest tool in the shed.
So is Buddy Roberts, now that we think about it.
Did I say Buddy Rogers again?
Yes.
God damn it.
Buddy Rogers, unfortunately, is not on this show. Sadly.
Buddy Rogers is pretty smart, too, I bet.
I bet he is. So, anyway, Fat Ass then theorized that Buddy is jealous of how good-looking Kerry is, as the fans either chant, "We want Sting," or "We want the wig." Kerry used a suplex that Mercer said will clean out your sinuses, which between the Kerry Von Erich suplex and the introductions to the ladder match that RJ City told you would make you shit your pants, this is a weird day in wrestling.
Honestly, who among us isn't jealous of how good looking Kerry Von Erich is?
Has that ever made you want to attack him from behind?
I don't want to do anything behind Kerry Von Erich, but if that's the way you swing, I certainly understand it.
Kerry wins with a roll up, by the way. Fun match, best we've seen on this show so far. Not that is saying much.
Yeah, this was good. Buddy can sell like a motherfucker, which is what you got to do with Kerry. You sell your ass off and make him look like a world beater. So this was, yeah. It turns out that this group of top heels that they've got in this territory are really fucking good at making these babyface brothers look really good.
You wonder what made them keep their job for so long.
I bet they did that on purpose.
So after the match, Michael Hayes ran in and whipped Kerry with his belt. But it's okay because Kerry then got it and the Freebirds ran off. So Kerry, since he didn't whip enough stuff, began whipping the mat with the belt. I bet that mat had it coming.
It knows what it did.
Yes. So then we get our main event, Bruiser Brody versus, well, he's Boris Zurkhov in one territory. He's Boris Zhukov now in this one. And in this territory, he's got General Skandor Akbar in his corner. And I guess after realizing no one could pronounce his name in this territory, Boris's name was changed, which is what he uses in the WWF.
I thought he was announced as Zurkhov here, and I guess my brain just auto-filled in whatever it thought.
Well, Brody is, as we've mentioned, and we will continue to mention until he's no longer the tag team champion. He's one half of the American Tag Team Champions, which we just ignore. Mercer got me worried for a second, and this is where I'm happy he was announcing instead of drunk Mark Lawrence, because God knows what Mark would have said. Mercer said Akbar has Kamala from Uganda and Mr. Ebony from wherever he's from. I breathed a sigh of relief because for a second I thought he was going to say probably Africa.
Wow. So I don't want to shock anyone, but Boris Zurkhov was not a match for Bruiser Brody.
I note that it's always fun watching Prime Brody, even if it is against Private Jim Nelson here. By this is where I noted that Boris's head is so much bigger with the beard, I think. Although maybe he was taking steroids in the WWF and made his head big too.
The steroids, do they do that? Do they make your head big? That's concerning.
Makes everything else big. I don't know.
Doesn't make your dick bigger.
I mean,
From what I've heard.
I've never taken steroids, so I don't know. We mentioned the referees being a bit whatever this week. This was evident here when Bruiser gets a chair and just starts beating the fuck out of Boris with the chair, and referee Bronco Lubick does not give a fuck.
Yeah.
However, while he doesn't give a fuck about him beating Boris with a chair, he does try to prevent Brody from running the ropes with an attack while Boris is tied in the ropes.
No, I can't have that.
No. Brody won with a knee drop. I was waiting for Bronco Lubick to disqualify Brody. Using a closed fist or something.
On the Boris Zurkhov scale, this was pretty good.
Yes. On the scale of an actual good wrestling match, we've seen better.
Yeah.
This was no 16-man tag from the 0 Hour show with 8 faces and 8 heels that were all mixed up. I'm still convinced
it was very confusing.
I'm still convinced that -1 somehow had something to do with that booking.
Maybe he did. So it was. So Kyle Fletcher, I think, is a heel because he's still with Callis, but he's kind of turning babyface because he's friends with Ospreay. And then Rocky Romero, I think, is a babyface.
Mm-hmm.
Top Flight and Leo Rush and Action Andretti are babyfaces.
Yeah.
Kip Sabian, I guess, is a babyface now.
That one I wasn't too sure of. It was either, 9 faces and 7 heels or 8 and 8, depending on Kip Sabian.
Yeah, I think since the patriarchy were mean to him, I think he's a babyface now. And then Tommy Billington, I guess, the babyface. And then, okay, Jay Lethal and Satnam Singh. So Jeff Jarrett is a babyface now. Are the other members of unnamed Jeff Jarrett faction babyfaces as well?
I assume they were heels, along with Agogo and Davari and Silver and Reynolds.
Yeah, but Private Party I also think are heels now.
I think they're babyfaces. When did they turn
I
heel?
think I don't think they turned heel. I think they've just been heel since Mark Quinn came back.
Oh, by the way, now that I'm thinking about this, weren't Private Party like the hosts of All In?
That's what they said. And then
Okay.
we heard them talk the one time on the pre-show, and then it was never mentioned again.
Yes. On the pre-show, when like 10,000 people were in the arena at this point, Private Party gets introduced for their one and only segment as the host of the show. At least when Miz was the host of SummerSlam, his one segment was the semi-main event of the show.
So what you're saying is that Private Party should have wrestled Snoop Dogg.
Yes, or Private Party should have wrestled Austin Theory and Grayson Waller, or have Jelly Roll hit them with a chair or something.
We did think that Pat McAfee was about to show up there at one point.
Yes, because they played his theme song. I think I said this, but in case I didn't, Brody won with a knee drop, in case you thought Boris Zukov was going to beat Bruiser Brody.
That head is quite a target.
Yes. I think that's why Bronco didn't mind him being hit with a chair, just because, with that giant head, you can take more punishment than a normal-sized head.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, Mercer closes the show with an on-camera where he says Kevin revenged on Garvin and Kerry revenged on Buddy, and then said next week Kerry and Iceman Parsons will team to take on Michael Hayes and Buddy Roberts. Why isn't Kerry teaming with his tag team championship partner?
Who cares about such things?
Apparently, I'm the only person. So it's hard to tell you what show is better this week. It's probably World Class, but it's like it was closer to a toss-up than usual on this show this week.
World Class was a little bit less than usual, and Mid-South was quite a bit more than usual. So the gap was smaller this week.
The gap, you say?
Mind the gap.
Yes. I've been to malls where the gap is just the space between two stores.
That's yeah, clever.
Yes, I thought channeling my inner Jerry Lawler would work at this point.
Anyway, that's the end of the show. Tell us about John Mulaney. How was John Mulaney?
Oh my God, I was at John Mulaney on Friday at Foxwoods, and he was fucking amazing. Here's the thing, and I understand it. At the end of the day, I actually understand why they did this. But when we went in, we had to lock up our phones and any other recording devices because they didn't want us to be able to record the show or film it or whatever. And so I wasn't quite sure how long the show went, but it probably went a good 90 minutes to 2 hours. He spent most of it talking about his family, which, I mean, it's always funny to talk about your family. Let's be honest here. And the one thing I remember him talking about was he talks about how everybody in his family dies old, like in their 90s. He talks about his parents. His parents are in their 70s. And it's like, other than the fact they're in their 70s, you'd never know that they were old people because they're very active and all that fun, happy horse shit. And he talks about how his grandfather was born in 1902. And he then tried to enlist in the army for World War II. And they told him he was too old to enlist in the army for World War II.
Wow.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes.
My grandfathers were born in like 21 and 22.
Yeah. Now, obviously, I'm, killing the joke here, and he told it much better. But I did spend the vast majority of the show, laughing my full head off at, him. And I'd strongly recommend checking him out if he's ever in your area.
Absolutely. Absolutely would. So my wife and I are like both kind of big stand-up comedy nerds. It was like one of the first things we kind of bonded over when we started dating. And then, so Mulaney is probably like our favorite comedian that we haven't managed to see live yet. After we have tickets to see Mark Maron that were originally for November that got pushed back to like next April. But yeah, after that, we gotta get Mulaney.
I should note that it was a good day all around because Foxwoods, in addition to being a place where you can see a stand-up comedian, is also a casino. And I walked in and I took just enough money. I walked in with $80 and I'm like, this is for food, this is for drink, this is for a little bit of gambling. And if I lose it all, it's $80. I'm all set. I got money for what I need until my next paycheck in sitting at home. And so I go with $80. I get a really good slice of pizza. I go sit down at a slot machine. I put in $20. I lose it. It's like, it's whatever. I'm like, let me find the theater because I was actually parked on the opposite side of the complex from where the theater was. So I walked the entire length of the damn place. I get to it, and the doors weren't open yet. So I'm like, okay, here's some slot machines right nearby the doors. I'm going to sit here and watch for when the doors open. And I sit down there and I had two fives. I didn't want to put another 20. So I put in $10. And apparently this was the right machine at the right time because at one point I was up about $320 and I cashed out of that machine at $225. So,
hey, right on.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good time.
Yeah, not bad for a $10 investment. Now, I did play a little bit more after the show. Again, I was whatever money I had, I was hoping not to lose the whole damn thing at this point, but if I lost it, hey, at least I had fun doing it. So I played some roulette. I was actually up I was up $75 on roulette, and I backed out at that point because I wanted to play some blackjack, and all the tables were $25 a hand. And so I'm like, okay, it's a multiple of 25. Let's go play 3 hands of blackjack or until I'm out. Well, I really suck at blackjack. I was out in 3 hands. But I went in with $80. I left with $170. So, all in all, a good trip to Foxwoods.
Awesome. I love casinos because they're like the last place where there are no laws. So I went to Vegas. It was when Minoru Suzuki came to wrestle Cody. That was like his first time in the U.S. in like 25 years. So it was we were just in the Sam's Town. And I remember it was like the morning and my wife had to do some work stuff or whatever. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to go downstairs. And I went downstairs and I started playing a machine. And this woman came up to me like, would you like a drink? And I'm like, well, sure. And then I really I didn't intend on having whiskey for breakfast, but it's yeah. Casinos are a lawless place. Weirdly, casinos and weirdly airports. Airports are I call it's like authoritarian anarchy. There are very strict, rigid rules that you have to follow, but other than those rules, there are no laws. You could have a beer at 8 a.m. You can sleep on a fucking bench. You can buy some luggage. You can buy cigarettes without paying taxes on it if you're in the right terminal. This is lawless places.
Sounds like New Orleans. Well,
love New Orleans.
Yes. I hate to push you off, but I got the TNA podcast recorded with Cindy in 15 minutes, and I got to go take a piss in between this. So
all right.
We got to call this a day. But before we go, do you have anything else you want to say to the fine listener out there?
I hope you're doing all right. Hope you have a good week. Hope you're having a good week because this is Tuesday for you. And hope you, if you go to a casino, I hope you hit a little bit of jackpot, enough to have a fun time. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Well, thank everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you again in a week.
Bye.